What? Hold What up, y'all? Sorry I didn't do a video yesterday. So the Meg I'm gonna do tomorrow. Like I might do like in the morning or something really quick before later. And then either that or I'll do it on Sunday morning. But today I'm doing the first Spider-Man film, Sam Raimi one. And I rewatched it a couple years ago, like I think 2 years ago, and man, it still holds up. Yeah, there are some parts that ended up becoming memes. Like I'm a bit of a scientist myself. You know, the that doesn't seem to be a bit of my that doesn't seem to be my problem. That scene was good. Um, but it is easily the best. It's probably the best origin story, to be honest with you, in terms of comic book films. Like it is so simple. We see him get bitten. Well, before that, they really set that tone. Like he's a nerd. Obviously, he's kind of an outcast, and then he gets bitten, and then obviously the powers kick in. You get that training scene. So like, I really think this is how you do an origin story. It does. They definitely are heavily inspired by Christopher Reeve Superman, the first one, and I don't blame them. I think that's a good template to do an origin, and I think they did a good job with this. The music, in my opinion, is so underrated. Like the one thing about these films, all of them, in my opinion, is the score is great, and I think it's very underrated because we always talk about like, because Danny Elfman did the music, so it's understandable that people will more remember him from the Burton Batman movies, but the score for this is so fucking good. Like it, not just like the main theme, like but like all the whole score. There's so many good performances. Willem Dafoe to me stole the show in terms of performances. He was so good as Green Goblin. The whole split personality thing was so fucking well done. And I thought Willem Dafoe really portrayed that very well. Um and to I can understand why maybe they haven't really tried to recast Green Goblin because sorry, it's fucking hot. But I can understand why they haven't recasted Green Goblin because it's like he was so good. And like yeah, like if I not negative, yeah, I mean I'm gonna acknowledge yeah the effects are very dated at times, like some not the swinging scenes, like more of like Green Goblin's effects, like when he's in the glider when it doesn't look great, but who gives a shit? This is a case when I don't care if the effects don't look great or they don't hold up. If the movie itself is still so good, I can kind of overlook that. And I think that's what this was. The movie is so good. Like the music, the way it sets it up. I also think this is the way they portray as a Spider-Man fan, um they really capture that world. I mean, the moment he becomes Spider-Man, the whole build up, like he eventually decides to become a hero, starts saving people. And I actually think this movie does the more like rewatching it and just noticing it today, I'll be honest. The way they do passage of time, like it's months. Like you see by like that moment he becomes Spider-Man, they really it's so much time passes. Like 'cause there's multiple holidays, like there's a I think there's Christmas, not Christmas, Thanksgiving, you get a graduation, so like there's months, and you see him become Spider-Man, and the growth from the town, and like what the city thinks of him, and I really think they really capture that perfectly in this. Um, the support for him from the cops, and they really capture that whole thing perfectly. The one thing, and that's more because I don't think she's a bad actress. I just think she should not have been Mary Jane, and that's Kirsten Dunst. I'm sorry. Rewatching this, I think she's good in this movie, but that's also partially because she's carried by Toby. I think she's kind of. We'll see if she holds up in the second film because I remember thinking she was fine, but I even at the time was thinking they probably should have got somebody else to be Mary Jane. I think I don't know the way she plays her at times is just and the way she delivers lines. It's just like ugh. But aside from that, I think she's serviceable in this movie as the love interest, and I think Toby like Peter's inner kind of like going into like his life in the beginning is very well done. And I do think they have chemistry at times, but there's some points where I'm like, ugh, the chemistry isn't there. But um, another thing about this movie I really like, it's way more positives. I love the saving the little compilation when he becomes Spider-Man and starts saving the city and get all these different stories. I love how they build up this. I think that's why this film works. Is the simplicity of it. It's not overly complicated. You have one villain with Green Goblin. It sets up Spider-Man's origin, but also sets up that world. Like, you have your Jonah Jameson with J.K. Simmons. I'm gonna say it. I know everybody says Hugh Jackman or Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man, Christopher Reeve Superman, or Henry Cavill Superman, or perfectly. For me, the best comic book movie casting, it has to be J.K. Simmons as Jonah Jameson. He is fucking Jameson. Like, to the point where almost, like, you kind of can't recast that character. He's been Jameson even in, like, even in the MCU. As much as I don't like that version of Spider-Man, even in that world, he's still fucking J. Jonah Jameson. So it's really, J.K. Simmons is J. Jonah Jameson. The moment he is on screen, it's like he fucking carries every scene. And he's not in a lot of it, at least in this one. He's a bit more in the second and third, but for the bit we get of him, he's so fucking good. He steals the scenery. Same thing with Willem Dafoe. That's why, like, to me, Willem Dafoe and him are kind of the VIPs of this movie for me. And Toby to an extent, but those two mainly just because, my God, J. Jonah Jameson was just perfect. He looked the part. He acted the part. Just the way he delivered the lines. Like, he was J. Jonah Jameson. So, yeah, and then, like, the final fight is great, obviously. And I actually like James Franco as Harry Osborn. I think he was decent. I liked his little chemistry with Peter, and then that ending where Peter, Spider-Man brings his dad back, but then Harry thinks he killed him, and that's what starts that arc, and then that ending where it's like Peter has what he wants, but he realizes he can't have it because Mary's going to be put in danger. And then he gets into I'm Spy. So it is kind of a little bit of a sad ending if you kind of think about it. Because at that moment he realizes, I can't be with Mary Jane. Because now if somebody finds out I'm Spider-Man, she's in danger. So that's why he's like, I can't do it. And then he walks away from her. So it is kind of a sad kind of ending. For like an origin story when you think about it. I didn't think about it at the time because, as a kid, I saw this at 6 years old when it was in theaters. So I was like, oh, Spider-Man, But when you think about it, yeah, that ending's kind of fucking sad. You think about, like, yeah, he beats the bad guy, and he's about to get, like, Mary basically tells him she loves him, and that, like, finally tells him, like, she has feelings for him, and he's like, no, I can't. As much as I want this, I can't. Because he knows if somebody finds out, I mean, it already kind of happened with Green Goblin. I mean, and going to Green Goblin, dude, Willem Dafoe, he played that role so well. The whole split personality thing, and the fact that he's basically acting against himself at times. Even the scene where it was just the mask, like you just see the helmet, and then you hear his voice as, like, the evil version talking, because it was after that scene where he finds out Peter is Spider-Man, which I fucking love that scene, dude. When he sees the cut, and, like, it all sets in, and it's like, bro, Willem Dafoe played his ass off in this movie. Like, even from the moment we see him. So, it's like, yeah, he's one of the best. If we had to do best comic book movie villains, he's up easily. It has to be almost top 5. If we're going just within Marvel, easily he might be number 1, if we're being honest. Number 1 or 2, like, because he fucking killed it. For me, it's number 2 because I do love Ian McKellen as Magneto. But, yeah, he's at least number 2. He was so fucking good in this. So, but anyway, I know I was going on for a while. It's just, I love this movie. The action sequences, that scene where, like, Goblin attacks the parade and Spider-Man has to suit up. and he like it's supposed to reminisce Superman. When Superman rips off the suit and you see the costume. So I like that. Like I like the little nods to because I can understand it makes sense. Superman 78 is definitely like a good origin. It does have that like I can understand. And I've said this before. I like those movies. I don't think they fully age well, but I can understand at least this movie kind of mimicking, not mimicking, but taking aspects from that movie because they really did do that. I mean, the training scene where he first realizes he has the spider powers and all that. Yeah, that's why this movie works. It's just the simplicity. So I'm giving this one a 10. I rarely give a film a 10, but for going just within comic book movies, it is a 10. And Spider-Man 2 would be like a 10.5. you know? So, but anyway. Tomorrow I'll be roasting I put it on Twitter. Screen Rant decided to do like I don't remember the number of reasons, but basically why the Jurassic trilogy doesn't hold up or some shit, and it only doesn't hold up mainly because Jurassic Park 3 was such a disappointment, and I'll mention that more tomorrow, but the reasons they listed, oh my god. There are maybe one where I'm like, okay, I kind of can see that, but then there are some, which majority I'm like, okay, this is just cringe. So I'm going to talk about that tomorrow, probably be tomorrow night. So, and then Sunday, if I see I probably should be, at least by Sunday, I should see, um, Last Voyage of the Meteor. So it depends on when I see. If I see it for some reason, see it tomorrow night, I might just review that and then do the Screen Rant article Sunday. But we'll see. I gotta see how things go. So, but anyway, let's get into Spider-Man. That's a crazy thing too. When you realize this movie was directed by the guy who did Evil Dead. And the fact that the guy who did Evil Dead made the two best Spider-Man movies is kind of crazy to me when you think about it. It's like, dude, the guy who made Evil Dead, and it's a low budget horror, made like two of the greatest comic book, or some of the greatest comic book films ever made. Like Spider-Man 2, and I know that's not till next week, but Spider-Man 2 to me is, it may be the greatest comic book or if not the greatest. To me, it may be Watchmen for me, just because for a while it was The Dark Knight, but Watchmen as like, I'm gonna eventually review that movie at some point, but Watchmen to me might be the greatest. But Spider-Man 2's up there, like that. And it's one of the greatest, even as like just in the Spider-Man mythos. I would say it's just one of the best Spider-Man stories. But even I'm including this one in there, just the simplicity of it, and the fact that it was fucking Sam Raimi who did Evil Dead is a crazy thing to me when you kind of put it into perspective, like how vastly different those movies are. So yeah. Anyway, let's get into it. So the movie opens. I love that little like intro we get with the music. Like, I'll mention it again. Danny Elfman's score in this is it's kind of underrated. Like, when you put it, because we always talk about John Williams' Superman score, even Hans Zimmer's score for Man of Steel, the X-Men theme. Danny Elfman's Batman scores, so it's like, those are great, but it's like the Spider-Man one's very underrated. And I think it's just because there's also other Spider-Man themes, like the classic Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man song, or even like the 90s Spider-Man theme. So I think it's just people more remember those, but the theme for this is really fucking good. So we get a cool intro. Then we see Peter, like, obviously his life, he's kind of an outcast. Like, he's always late to the bus, so the bus always skips over him, and You know, everybody makes fun of him. Like, even when he's on the bus, like, nobody wants him to sit next to him, so he has to sit in the back. And then he loves Mary. I do love, like, how he kind of narrates, you know, his life. And then, so they go on a field trip. Then we get the infamous, he's taking a picture of Mary Jane. Then we get the infamous, he gets bitten by the radioactive spider. And it's like this movie gets into it pretty quick. Like, it's one of those, like, they don't really take a long time to get into it. Like, he gets bitten, then he kind of gets sick that night. Then the next day, he's like all yoked. He kind of gets more muscular. He actually can see because he starts off not, you know, wearing glasses. Sorry, guys. I don't know why I'm sweating like a fuck dog right now. But anyway, he realizes like something's up. But so then he goes to school. Then he starts realizing he has like webs start coming out and things start sticking to him. So it made for some funny scenes, and then he ends up trying to like accidentally webbing a lunch tray and dumping it on Flash Thompson, who's like his bully. And then we get that classic fight scene, which I fucking love, where Peter's just dodging everything, and the choreography is still very well done. And then so he ends up beating up Flash. Obviously, kind of everyone gets mad at him. I love the little douche he calls him Freak, because the douche got mad because he beat his ass, because he also beat his ass along with Flash. So that was funny to me. That night, he runs off. Then this is where we get that training scene. Like, he starts really realize, okay, I have spider powers. He starts climbing walls, jumping, even attempting to web shoot. I really love those are some of my favorite scenes in the movie, to be honest. Just those little training scenes, like. And yeah, some of the effects, like I said, are dated, but who gives a shit? When your movie's actually very well written, I can overlook bad CGI, to be honest. I can't. And I actually don't think it was bad CGI. I just think it just probably doesn't hold up. It was from 2002. And maybe if I didn't watch it on my like uber nice TV, it maybe won't look as bad. Like, I think probably at the time, this looked amazing for 2002. So I'm not going to sit here and say it's bad CGI. I think it's just more just dated CGI than bad. It was probably great for the time, and it probably just wasn't meant to watch it on like a 4K TV, you know? So, then he goes home, and then he has some scenes. Like, even just some of those scenes with Mary Jane, I think Kirsten Dunst just wasn't right. There's just something about her. I like her and other stuff. I don't know, maybe she just wasn't. I liked her more when I was younger, but the more I like later really did watch these movies, and I've seen some people point it out, I may have to agree. They didn't have chemistry at times. I think they have chemistry towards the end, but definitely in the beginning, I'll be honest, there was not a lot of chemistry rewatching it today. I was noticing that. It was like, ugh. It felt like Toby was trying to carry it, and she just didn't carry it as much. So, okay. Then after that, this is where he decides he wants to buy a car, and he gets the idea, so he needs to make the money. So he looks into the newspaper and finds out about the wrestling appearance. This is where we get, my opinion, one of the greatest cameos in comic book movie fucking history is Randy Savage's Buzzsaw. Bonesaw, sorry, not Buzzsaw. Bonesaw is ready. I fucking love that scene. Such a classic. And when he shows up in the Spider-Man suit, and we get that. I've already seen fucking weirdos bitch about that scene where he mentions like that, you know, makes fun of Bonesaw's outfit and says like, "Oh, did your husband buy it for you?" Like, people would call it, like, they're already weirdos trying to say that's homophobic or whatever. But like, no, that's Spider-Man. He makes fun of you. That's supposed to be his thing. He kind of, and like, he was already kind of there, so he ends up surviving, but because he beat him in 2 minutes instead of 3 minutes, he didn't get enough money. Then the booker, I'm assuming this is the booker as a wrestling, yeah, I think that's supposed to be the booker, gets robbed. Peter decides not to stop him because, you know, because you get a line like, "I didn't see why that's my problem," because Peter asks him about like, "Oh, I need the money," and then basically he kind of flips it on him. Oh, before that, yeah, sorry, I glossed over one of the most iconic scenes ever, where Uncle Ben was perfectly cast for this movie. He was so good, even just for the little bit we get of him. You know, obviously, you go in, you know, as a Spider-Man, and you know what's gonna happen, but the with great power comes great responsibility scenes is so very well done, and you know, it's so sad because you know, Peter, you know, obviously lashes out. You know, it's supposed to be that teenage moment where, oh, you're just lecturing me about, because, you know, because Uncle Ben notices changes within Peter. And it's supposed to be like, and like to this day, that quote, with great respect, even with other characters that's used, because that quote is kind of universal to where that kind of could apply to any kind of comic book character. And I've seen that quote used even, you know, for Batman, Superman, like different all kinds of characters, and that's why, and it still works, and that's why that scene to this day is quoted. Like maybe, yeah, and then yeah, so Peter, after letting the guy go, comes down out of the building, and we find out that's where he finds Uncle Ben dead or shot. And yeah, that's where we get that iconic scene, and it is a sad one. He then chases the guy because the guy is in a chase the stolen car that ends up in like a warehouse where Spider-Man follows him. And one of the pretty good scenes, it makes it seem like Peter killed him, but in actuality, the guy just tripped on like a sewer pipe. And then goes home, and that's a little scene with him and Uncle Aunt May, which I'm going to talk about Aunt May, but I didn't really talk about her. I think she's, to me, and Raimi verse, that's what I'm going to call this. Aunt May, to me, is best Aunt May. She's one of the best versions. To me, I don't like the whole young Aunt May thing. I'm cool with, like, I think there's a cartoon where she still has gray hair, but she's still like she's in like her 50s. I'm okay with that. But what they did with fucking um yeah, with what they did with fucking MCU Aunt May, I'm just, I don't want to fuck Aunt May. That's how I look at it. I don't want to fuck Aunt May. So um I just think that's how I think Aunt May should be portrayed, is like she's another one of the like the figure for Peter, like to be like his rock, kind of like his Uncle Ben in a way, but like she's supposed to be like his rock, along with Mary Jane, and I just think she was the best at it. I feel like the Raimi verse one captured that versus. So yeah, but so after that, this is where like that kind of speech kicks in from Uncle Ben, and then we get that scene where because he drew like an outline of what he wanted his costume to be, and then this is where we get Spider-Man. I love this little kind of compilation of Spider-Man just taking out villains, and you don't get a good look at his suit. You kind of see it a little bit, like him swinging at times, but you don't like see fully what his suit looks like. You just see him stop robberies, local robberies, and the town, the city starts like talking about him, including. I love it. I love this little like groundswell of support and what even different opinions. There's some people who like didn't like him, you know, and this is where they introduced Jameson. Yeah, J.K. Simmons is Jameson. Just even from the beginning, it's just like, yeah, dude, he's so fucking good. He is. I have to. Yeah, I'm gonna stick with that. What I said. I think he's the best comic book movie casting. He is J. Jonah Jameson to me. Like to where, yeah, he's even in other films. You know. Um. But yeah, I really, really like this whole sequence, and then while this happens, Norman takes a like does an experiment on himself, and this is where we get the birth of not Doc Ock, fucking hell, Green Goblin. And I like the comic Green Goblin look, but I'm fine with how they did it. I know some people, I've seen the memes of some people who said his suit looks too Power Rangery. I'm fine with how they did it here because it's like, I like the movie look, I mean the comic look, but it's like, I can see that not working live action because it was like a goblin outfit. Like, why would he just wear a goblin outfit? So I'm fine with how they did it, like more military-ish look. Like I think that's what they were going for. Like it's armored and it looks like something like the military would use. I actually like. I'm gonna be honest. I prefer the movie like actual glider than the comic one. I'm gonna say it. I like the comic glider, but I kind of like the movie one. I like how it's like it looks like that's. I could believe that's how a movie version would look like. So, and that scene where we first see him when he attacks that military base is so fucking good. And then we get that split personality between him and Norman. I fucking love it. Like, that is some of the greatest. Willem Dafoe's acting in this. Where we, like, there's every scene where he just starts hearing himself. He's almost talking to himself. I don't know, I'm going to jump ahead, way ahead, but that scene where he's talking about this is after he realized Peter's Spider-Man. And he's like, you got to go for the heart. And he's talking about Aunt May. And he's just talking to a chair with the helmet on it. That's it. There's no, and then there's a scene in the mirror. It's so fucking good, man. His whole performance. And I mean, all this is going on. Harry starts going out with Mary, which I'll be honest, I didn't really care for this aspect of the story. I think I probably you easily couldn't have them not together. I kind of get what they were going for. They were trying to set up Harry kind of not necessarily being against Peter, but being against Spider-Man. And because there's a line later where Norman basically implies that, oh, Mary's only with you for the money and all that. And I get that's what they were trying to set up, but I feel like you could have still had that whole thing play out and still you didn't really have to have that whole element. That's whatever though. It's not like it doesn't ruin the movie for me. So, Spider-Man saves this is where we get the parade scene, which in my opinion is one of the greatest, like, first appearances of a villain. Because Norman before this gets, Oscorp drops him and all that, so he kind of wants to get revenge, and this is where he attacks them and kills all the higher execs and causes a big commotion, fucking hell, I don't know what the fuck I was thinking there. I meant to say big, he causes like a big, attack and all this shit, where all bunch of shit's going on, Mary Jane's in danger. So Spider-Man shows. Oh, Peter before that saves some people from from being crushed by some by a building falling. So Spider-Man shows up, confronts Green Goblin. We get a little fight between them, and then Peter saves Mary Jane. And it's where Mary Jane starts falling in love with Spider-Man, and while this happens, Peter starts working for the Daily Bugle, getting pictures of Spider-Man so he can make some money. I really think they capture that whole aspect of Spider-Man perfect. I love the scene in the house where he's saving people in the burning fire. Just little things like that. And I think, like, Spider-Man 2002, the first one, I will say, it is a perfect hero's journey. Like, Peter's whole arc from the beginning to where he, even by this point in the movie, he is. Like, it really, he's gone through a hero's journey. But it turns out it was just a trap from Doc Ock. Why do I keep fucking saying Doc Ock? Green Goblin, sorry. Green Goblin. Doc Ock's next week. Green Goblin. And like I said, Willem Dafoe was so good. I'm fine with how they did it. I think it holds up. The whole military look for Green Goblin with the whole more armored look. I understand some people maybe wanted the more comic book look, but I can understand little changes like that. Like, you gotta make it work for the movie. some things don't work for a movie, like from comics to movie. So Spider-Man, we get another scene between Peter and Mary. Oh yeah, before I get to the Green Goblin attacks the Daily Bugle scene, Peter saves Mary Jane from being robbed. Because he had just seen her, and then she ends up getting attacked by these dudes who try to rob her, and he ends up saving her, unmasked, and he puts the mask on, and we get that iconic scene where he's hanging upside down, and she kisses him, which I do think is a good scene. I still think it's a very well executed scene. So I think by this point, Mary Jane and Peter have connection. I just think it was just that beginning bit. They didn't really have chemistry, I think. So then this is where Peter and Green Goblin have the battle, because Peter gets the cuts from Green Goblin's little blade things, and then after this Peter has to get back to Harry's house for Thanksgiving dinner with his dad and him, and man, I love this scene. Even just like the moment Peter has to get back, and because he's late because he had just gotten done with his little battle with Green Goblin. Oh, I'm sorry, guys. I skipped another moment where Green Goblin attacks the Daily Beagle, which I thought that was a great scene. And then Spider-Man shows up, but Green Goblin knocks him out with some like sleeping gas. Watching this scene, I was thinking in my head, he probably could have been a good Scarecrow. I think Willem Dafoe probably could have pulled. I know a lot of people say he could have been a great Joker, which I do agree with, but I think he could have been a good Scarecrow also. Just this scene alone, and then even the way Peter wakes up, it gave me kind of Scarecrow vibes. And then Green Goblin offers him, "You got to join me," basically so he kind of even has a chance to kill him, but leaves him alive, so it gives Spider-Man a chance to join him. Then they fight again at the apartment fire, which actually was caused by him. It was basically a trap to get Spider-Man there. Spider-Man refuses to join him. This is where we get the scene where Peter gets back from the fight, because he had just got done getting cut by those blade things that Green Goblin has. And I actually just love this whole scene, like Peter getting back, and he has to hide from people coming in his room, and this is where Green Goblin, because you hear like the blood drop because he just got cut, and like he hears the blood drop, and he sees the blood, and then you see Peter hiding under the outside balcony. Then he gets back in, things seem normal, and then I'm basically going to say Green Goblin, fuck it, notices his arm cut, and man, that moment Norman notices it, and it just sets in like, oh my god, it's fucking, because earlier when Green Goblin attacked the Daily Beagle, he asked, who's the guy who photographed Spider-Man? So it was like this is when movies still had payoffs, that concept of payoffs and foreshadowing and all this shit. And yeah, so when Norman realized, oh my god, it's fucking Peter, and then he goes back to his apartment, he abruptly leaves. You have that scene where Norman because Harry's like, oh, Mary Jane's important to me and all this, and he's like, she's just gonna be another girl who wants you for your money. Basically, that's what but Norman said. He just went kind of based towards the end there. It's like, what the fuck? Anyway, that was funny. But then, yeah, he gets back to his house, and this is where you get that awesome scene where basically Norman is like, no, I can't attack Peter. And Green Goblin and it's just the fucking helmet on a chair, and you're just hearing Willem Dafoe's voice. He's basically talking to himself. It is so well done. Basically say, you gotta go for the heart, which is Aunt May. And then if we get I know this is kind of seen as a meme now, where Aunt May's praying, and then just boom. I do think it's a well done scene though, where Green Goblin kind of scares her, because she kind of does end up getting injured. Peter goes to the hospital, and this is where Peter and Mary have like a scene, and Harry comes and realizes it, and he kind of has a little moment with his dad, and he mentions that Mary Jane and Peter, because now he knows Peter's Spider-Man. It's like, oh, now I have another little things like that. Like they just, it's like now fucking Green Goblin knows, like, oh, now I have another way to get to Spider-Man now with Mary Jane. So he kidnaps Mary Jane. Even the way that whole scene's done, because Peter's calling her at her house, and it is initially just a fucking voicemail, and then it's fucking Osborn's voice. It's like, oh my god, it's so good. So Spider-Man saves him because Green Goblin has taken like one of those I don't know what to call it, but like the fucking high. It's like a tourist thing where you can see high up in New York City, um, along with saving Mary Jane. So he ends up doing that. So we get a cool like Spider-Man scene where he's holding her while holding the thing. So he ends up saving them. Green Goblin kidnaps Peter, takes Peter, and basically beats his ass for a little bit. Then Peter takes the fight to Green Goblin. Oh, and this is where we get that iconic shot where like Green Goblin throws the bomb, and it's like you see Peter's face and his mask is all damaged. I love that shot. I've always loved that shot. And then Norman acts like it's him, like pleading with Peter, but it's actually he's trying to set up a trap to try to kill him with the glider. It enables like its blades, and then it calls the glider, but then Peter jumps because he has the Spidey sense, which is that's another thing about this movie. I love how they do spider sense, especially the first time, and like the way like you see every little thing, like you hear every little noise. Like they really capture Spidey sense perfectly in these movies. So he jumps, Goblin ends up killing himself. The beer sneaks in back to Norman's house, Harry's house. Harry sees him, thinks Spider-Man killed him, tries to shoot him, but he's gone. He doesn't get a good look at his face, even though the mask was damaged, so you couldn't see it's Peter, but it was dark enough so you couldn't tell. You just could tell it's a guy in a suit. Then Peter talks to Harry one more time. Harry still doesn't know at this point that it's Peter who's Spider-Man, because it makes sense. He didn't get a good look at him. It was nighttime. It was dark. He just saw a guy in like a Spider-Man costume. He didn't really get a good look at the mask being damaged. And it was shadowed enough to where you couldn't tell. So he basically tells Peter, Spider-Man's gonna pay and all this, but he basically hugs Peter and says, you're basically the only family I have left. So like they're basically cool for now till the second film. And then he visits Ben Parker's grave. Mary basically tells him her feelings for him, and it's that moment like Peter's always wanted, but it's like he realizes I can't be with her. And that's the thing about kind of like superheroes, you kind of can't, because if you do have a significant other, they could always be in danger. Superman, it might be the exception because he's almost like, I'm not going to say OP, but like he has that like aspect about him where he could essentially save her. He always does end up saving Lois for the most part. But Spider-Man isn't as powerful. So it's like at that moment, Peter realizes like, I can't be with her. Because Green Goblin found out who she was. So it's like, I understand. So this film does have kind of a dark, not dark, but like a sad ending a little bit. Like, Peter can't be with her. Like, literally, they kiss, and it's all like she finally tells him how she feels. And it's like, no, I can't do it. And then he walks away, and then he talks about how I'm Spider-Man, and I have basically all these responsibilities. And then we see Spider-Man swinging. We get some cool swinging shots and all that. And yeah, but it's understandable. It's like Mary Jane just was put in danger. because Green Goblin found out who Peter Parker was. So it's like it can just happen again because he probably knows with all the powers I have, there's going to be another villain like that, you know? So I think they really did that perfectly. So yeah, it does have kind of a sad ending. Like, yeah, he beats the bad guy, but he can't beat the girl because he knows she could just be put in danger. So I love this movie. The simplicity of it, the that's really it. It's so simple. The Spider-Man's origin and how he became a thing. I actually think this movie really does the passage of time very well. Like it's almost like I don't know if it's I would say a year, but they like go through different like because even the start of the film is like during school year, and then there's Christmas. I think there is a Christmas, not a Christmas section, a Thanksgiving section. Sorry, Thanksgiving section, and even just the bone saw is ready scene. I fucking love it. Just so iconic. I love the soundtrack. Tobey Maguire as Peter Parker is so good. Like he really captures that nerdy, bullied, outcast aspect of Peter. Don't get me wrong, I love it. I like Andrew Garfield as Spider Man, but I think he was too kind of cool Peter for me. But aside from that, I think Toby really captured the whole outcast aspect of Peter. But once he becomes Spider Man, he's fucking well done. He has the wit, just the scenes in the beginning. I mean, we get more of the wit in the second film. It makes sense in this one where they're establishing him as a hero, and he's more safe doing little things like saving people and burning buildings, stopping robberies. He's not. It isn't until Green Goblin he's fighting major. Like by the second film, we get more of him talking, and we get more of like kind of trash talking Spider-Man. I think it's just we gotta wait. I get why we didn't really get a lot of that in this one. We have to establish him as a hero first, and I think they really do a good job of that. It's perfect hero's journey for Peter Parker. Uncle Ben's speech is just so iconic. Like you almost kind of can apply that for any hero, but it's so universal. So I love this movie. I'm happy to have watched it again. I'm happy. I'm happy I decided to do this series. Now next week I get to do Spider-Man 2, the best Spider-Man movie. I can accept this one being an answer, but no other ones. When I say some people try to say Spider-Verse, I'm like, they're good, but they're not the best. They're not even Spider-Man movies. They're about miles, so they're not Spider-Man movies. But even just taking that out, even if they were about Peter, no, it is Spider-Man 2. Spider-Man 2, just Doc Ock, Peter's whole arc, like even to the point that he's a point where he almost gives a big kind of being Spider-Man. Like that's well done. Harry's little subplot, finding out that Peter is Spider-Man and now he wants to get him. The action scenes, I just think Spider-Man 2 is so good. Like I added to me one of the best Spider-Man stories in Spider-Man's mythos. That's even just within comic stories. So I love Spider-Man 2. So can't wait to talk about that next week. But yeah, Tobey Maguire Spider-Man is just so well done. I know there's some scenes that are kind of memeable, but it's such a well done movie. So it's been fun talking about that. Tomorrow, I am gonna be roasting the Screen Rant. Really, the fact that they put Halloween in their mouth. Now I want to put Jurassic Park in their mouth. And the Jurassic Park trilogy, the true case is with that, Jurassic Park 3 was the disappointment. The first two were good. And one of the points they even brought up was, oh, the characters are forgettable. I'm like, what are you fucking talking about? Not even just in the first one. We can talk about the first characters, obviously, but even the second one, Sarah Harding. Obviously, I think there are some things that some of the characters in Lost World. I love Lost World, but there are like some of the shit Sarah Harding did doesn't make sense. Same thing with Nick Van Owen, but they are memorable. Eddie Carr, Ian Malcolm, obviously. Roland Tembo's considered one of the best characters in Jurassic Park. I've seen in a lot of lists. Like even people who don't necessarily love Lost World like his character. So even in 3, I hate to say there's some like Eric, Billy, who I do hate. Alan, who I thought was Sam Neill, kind of phoning it in. Into the shitty Kirby family. So I even remember those shitty characters. So it's like that's not even a good point. So I can't wait to roast this article tomorrow. But it's been nice talking about some shit I like for the last few days. So anyway. Oh, before that, we're gonna talk about the Meg, because the Meg, rewatched it last night. The Meg still holds up, I think. Like, it's such just a dumb fun movie, but the cast is great. Rainn Wilson. I like that original. Like, no, I like the crew from the second movie, but the crew from the first one, just like, wow, they have chemistry. I actually think the one thing that really made it work, there was no bad guy. There wasn't some human bad guy. It was just the Meg being a threat. And I think that's the second one should have just been that. You don't need a human bad guy in these killer animal movies. But anyway, so I'll talk about that tomorrow or Sunday. But for sure, tomorrow we're going to roast that Screen Rant article. But anyway, guys, it's been fun talking about Spider-Man 1. Can't wait to do Spider-Man 2 next week. But anyway, guys, cheers. I'll talk to y'all tomorrow. Alright, y'all. Talk to y'all later.